how how many podcasts do you actually listen to? Like, what kind of
Uh,
flow do
a
you
small
like?
handful, and it's almost exclusively true crime. Like
Really?
that's, yeah, I think that was my foray into podcasts, and I think that's largely what I've stuck with is true crime. And there's probably like half a dozen or so that I listen to.
So,
Actually, I should qualify that by saying Let's Go to Court was the first one that I really got into. And that was
really?
two ladies that I think are probably about our age that were talking about different court cases, but they weren't always like murdery.
Okay.
Sometimes they're like a really boring court case or an odd one or whatever.
Yeah.
But they had really good banter, and that was what got me into them.
Okay. That's cool. I haven't heard of that one. Like my only true crime podcast that I've ever listened to was And That's Why We Drink. And it's by
I heard of
two.
that one.
I love them. There's two co-hosts. One exclusively drinks milkshakes, and the other one exclusively drinks wine. And like one will always talk about like a murder mystery, and the other one will always talk about like a cult or something like that, and
Hmm.
or like supernatural. It's is I love that. I haven't listened to it in a while, but we should definitely think about doing like the I know we talked about it, like the unsolved mysteries type podcast.
Oh yeah.
That could be
Yeah.
fun. That could be a lot of
I think
fun.
that could be a good time.
Okay, so why were you drawn into sci-fi, of all things? Going from murder mystery podcast to sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, I the sci-fi thing has picked up over the last couple years, and honestly, I think it's because, well, in part because I'm a book cover snob, and old sci-fi has really, really cool book covers. Uh, but and I know you and I have talked about it IRL before, but I like that sci-fi is so different than what's happening in reality. Like,
It is, isn't it?
reality is so dark and sad and scary that sometimes that complete break, in most stuff is set in the future and,
Mm.
the shit's already happened or whatever. But I think that I do just like that it's pretty different from the day-to-day experience, and even the mundane is, like high tech and weird and crazy and things are happening. I think that's the appeal of it.
I heard someone tell me once, and I think it might have been in a writing class, that fantasy and sci fi are the same thing. One is just set in the past and one is set in the future. And you can learn basically the same lessons from a really good sci fi or high fantasy book, either way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think that tracks.
honestly, like, having read what we just read, I see that so hard. So hard. And okay, so was this your first time approaching Starship Troopers?
In book form,
Yeah.
yeah, I hadn't read it before. Uh, James had talked about it before, so I was aware of some of the elements of the book, but I'd never read it before.
I can't. So, I don't know if I talked to you about this before, but in high school I was a TA for the library. Like that's really surprising,
That's a cool
right?
gig. Yeah, right.
It was honestly it was a really cool gig. It was the class right after lunch, so I could actually go in and spend my lunch 45 minutes or whatever it was in the library if I wanted to because I was the TA right after lunch. And I was reshelving Starship Troopers, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll check this out. I had basically read anything fantasy related in the library, and I knew the movie. I didn't know it was a book. Um, and the book version that was in our library was the green one with like the reticle
Hmm.
on the bug. And that is not like the stereotypical cover I found.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a newer cover. The one that was originally published was actually the troopers with the parachutes.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember if I told you that I went and special ordered the English version. And so I said I'm a cover snob, so it's got kind of a different look to it.
That
I
is a
think this one might
cool
be from the
cover.
70s. But yeah,
That's
I'm
a
like,
cool
ooh, this
cover.
is dope. I like this. But the
That's
green one is the one that I've seen everywhere.
that's the one. That's the one that I had seen in high school. And then there's another one that's got a picture of a real rough looking Johnny on the front, kind of like in the suit and everything, and it's just like his face. And yeah. So let's get into the book. I'm going to pull up the particulars of the book, and we'll go from there. How long did it take you to read?
I It's not a fair metric for anybody else. Probably 2 weeks, and that's just because I'm not a sit down and read nonstop kind of person. I'm very much an hour here, 30 minutes there kind of person.
That's fair.
But yeah, it
Okay.
was probably about 2 weeks.
So we read Robert A. I'm going to say this wrong. Heinlein, Starship Troopers. You can get it on Amazon, paperback or e-reader. It is not on KU for those who are interested. It says that it was about 290 pages. I did not think it was that long. It did not read like it was that long. It took me about
Yeah.
a day to get through it. I basically spent an afternoon, um, or a Saturday, basically reading it. Um,
Yeah, my copy says 220 pages.
that that seems about right. Let's see. Let me pull up the particulars on when it was published originally because this one says 87.
1959, I remember from consuming other YouTube reviews.
Oh, you pre-gamed for this, huh?
Oh, you know it. You know it.
So, okay, we are coming into our very first episode of Ink and Asteroids. You guys can thank Smash for that lovely title. She came up with that for our podcast. And our first book is Starship Troopers, and we're only going to discuss the book. There will be an episode coming for The Book Was Better, where we discuss the book versus the movie and how the differences helped, change between the two, and then decide which one was better, the book or the movie. Okay. Having the movie come out in 97, prime time of our lives, that was. Missed the 90s so much.
Oh yeah.
Was this what you were expecting when you cracked it open?
Mm, well, like I said, I had a little context in the because James has read it previously, and
Mm-hmm.
he, gave me a little heads up that it might be not what I thought it was going to be. But even knowing that going into that, I would say, yeah, I expected a lot more uh emphasis on the science fiction,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the emphasis was largely on the military tactics and hierarchy and that kind of stuff, which
Yeah.
wasn't what I was expecting.
Our first glimpse of our protagonist, he is getting ready for a drop. That's what they call them, is drops. And if you're going to start reading this book, forget everything that you know about Starship Troopers because it does not apply. Um, they are troopers. There is a starship. We don't really talk about space. And it's really just a story of this guy in a time that is different from ours. Like, I did not. I know I tried to read it in high school and I couldn't get through it because it was so heavy and emphasizing philosophy of just social dynamics in a world where the military has quite literally taken over. And they do go into how that happened, but not until like the end of the book.
Right.
So, my question then is, no, I don't know how to put this because I don't want to frame it against what we know of Starship Troopers before reading. So I don't know. What was the first thing you came out of that first chapter? Like coming out of that, like what was your first thought?
Um, I think I was just surprised about what the what the focus was, you know? Like looking back, yeah, I think that even though you try to go into something without an expectation,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, that really wasn't, what I thought it was going to be.
I thought Johnny, because it is about Johnny Rico, he is our narrator through the entirety of the book.
Hmm.
And I know our longtime listeners listening to this are gonna say something because the whole thing is in first person, and not even like first person, but like recollection first person, and it works really well. Like I didn't have any doubt that these were his feelings and not his feelings superimposed on other people. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, there weren't really a lot of feelings in this. This guy just kind of like went along the river of life
Yeah.
without making too many choices himself.
Yeah, it seems like he entered the military because of what his high school friends were doing.
Mm-hmm.
He continued through the military because of what the higher ups and the other guys in the military were doing. And everything has kind of been like, just going with
Going
the
with the
flow.
flow. Like he didn't
Yeah,
we see a lot of his high school, a lot of the high school, a lot of the training. The training I think takes up the majority of the book.
definitely.
And hold on, somebody is really asking for attention. Come here, Spike. I know. Oh no. Okay. He it takes up a lot of the book takes up a lot of page real estate is for training and his getting into it, and the impetus for him even joining. They're footnotes. There's like maybe 3 lines to the entire book about the two people he joined with. And is this what you wanted? Are you happy?
Well, even like who's the teacher, Mr. Dubois,
Yeah.
where he gets the letter from him, and I think he's kind of surprised, like didn't see Mr. Dubois as the whole person or the military aspect.
Right.
And so he's kind of surprised by it and surprised by how like Mr. Dubois' feelings towards him then being in the military. And it's just, yeah, everything kind of does just feel like it's happening to him, or happening to
Right.
him, but not so much that he's invested or experiencing it directly.
Yeah, I mean, even at the end, which no spoilers, but at the end, I was like, how did you get here? Like, not one active choice the entire way. Him going to officer training, like, he goes in to talk to Jelly about it. It's already set.
From like an
Why?
off the cuff remark or
Right,
whatever.
right. Like, I, I don't know. I mean, even before that, the very first chapter is his first jump in his position as like squad leader or something like that. And he doesn't know how he got there considering there were other people who have done more than him. And it makes me go, okay, then why are you there? Like how did you get to slip into that space? And then come to find out it's always been that way. He's always just kind of pushed, which okay. So I did a little research after reading it, and I found that a lot of people speculate that this is Robert's self-insert fantasy about his
I,
own military career,
hmm
and it makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why I hate a lot of contemporary romantasy books, because it's all just a self-insert fantasy, and you can tell
Hmm.
usually, because there's nothing really to commend the main character, and yet everything just kind of falls in their lap. Like there are many instances where Johnny should have died
Yeah.
just based on incompetence. He doesn't
Yeah.
he doesn't have anything to commend him. He was a track star in high school, but that doesn't matter when you're wearing a mech suit.
Right. Well, and I've even seen people refer to it as like a coming of age story, but a coming of age story feels like there's some sort of uh learning experience or something that you unpack along the way to get you to being a more fleshed out or
Right.
whatever, fully realized person. But I never get that
The
with this character.
the only time he's ever like actually excited is when he thinks there are girls around.
Right. Which
He's
is a whole
whole nother thing. Um,
yeah.
the girls on the secret planet base thing. Like he's like, I just like there's a whole lot of women, and that's all I want. I just want to know where the girls are, and I'm over here like, wow. Okay, so you haven't heard it yet, but there was an episode. There's an episode coming out. We are recording, of course, a couple of days before I'm going to release this episode. But the episode coming out on the 24th, we talked about how there was a soldier in the army for over 10 years, never once had his pee-pee touched, and I feel like that's Johnny Rico too.
Basically.
He's just a horn dog, and he's like apparently before the epilogue, that's only like 2 years of his life, and I don't know how. There's
Yeah.
just I feel like there was so much in this story, and yet not enough to actually make it like a full story. I kept going. I didn't realize I was near the end of it because I wasn't reading physical. I was reading it on the Kindle. Of course, you never know when the end is coming on a Kindle because you can't.
Hmm.
You don't have that thumb measurement. Uh, but I just kept turning the page, hoping there was like an apex and then a down, and it just kept going like this. So there was like no way to gauge where you were in the story, and so much happens, and yet absolutely nothing happens.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's where the self-insert kind of comes into play, though, too. Like in your own mind, you're a fully realized thing. But
Mm.
when you're trying to put that on paper, the reader doesn't have all of that context and background that makes you a fully formed person. And instead, we're just supposed to. I saw in some places, you know, the question being posed whether Johnny Rico's an unreliable narrator or whatever. And I was like, oh, I don't really know. But as I think about it, it's just like, yeah, yeah, what is this guy? Why do we trust this guy's perception on things or his perspective when it really seems like he has no idea what's going on? He's just, you know,
You know what? I agree with you. He has no thoughts or feelings of his own.
yeah.
So, like, if he were someone that I could connect to, then I would say yes, he can be a reliable narrator. But you're absolutely correct. He's just kind of not. And any place
Hmm.
that you would think the story would be filled in by what he's experiencing, it's all very factual, and then the author falls right into flashback conversations,
Right.
and those
Which, on the
conversations are
one
all
hand,
philosophical.
well, and on the one hand, I can understand in the fact that um, you're trying to world build and bring info in a way that makes sense. So, the high school flashbacks, the philosophical, why is that word so hard? The
Mm-hmm.
philosophical conversations that happen with the teacher and stuff. It's like I understand that he's trying to world build a bit there. But yeah, you go from those descriptions to something that's almost really sterile and clinical, talking about the ins and outs of the military and how that works and boot camp and what's involved in that.
Hmm.
And I don't think it always flows nicely.
It's almost like the whole basic training, because it is such a large part. It's trying to help us establish that emotional connection with Johnny, because it's showing how much he has suffered and grown in that time. But honestly, I didn't really get that, because he's not, he only well, he complains all the time, but it's not nothing but belly aching kind of complaints. Even when he takes the licks, he's like, now I understand. I get it. I'm happy to have had this instead of what the guy before me had, and I totally understand. Like, the it's like, okay, it's that kind of idea that you did something wrong, your parents have punished you and asked you if you've learned your lesson. And instead of just saying, yeah, I learned my lesson, so they stop, the punishment, he's actually, no, 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 I've actually learned that lesson, and I'm going to never forget that lesson. Like, it's, it's put forward with such sincerity that it seems fake. I read somewhere, I think it was on Reddit, that a lot of people, when the book came out, thought Heinlein, I'm probably saying that wrong, was just using it as a commentary on the youth of the era, which just sounds like, the kind of adage that has been used for quite literally the last 200 years of kids these days don't know how to work.
Hmm.
And that if you look at the whole text with that kind of film, that he is just commenting on the youth of the day, it is trite and disrespectful to the plights of the people that would be in that situation. And it then makes it
Well, there is the whole passage in there, I think, the teacher talking about how basically because teenagers weren't physically disciplined,
right,
that
corporal
they became
punishment.
juvenile, yeah, delinquents,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
when
that's what basically caused the world to go to hell.
I hated that chapter so much. So
It
much.
was yeah, it was a tough one to get through, just like heavy on the eye roll.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's there are definitely things in the book that stand up and hold a mirror to today. That I don't think is one of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I know you could probably troll Facebook and see people, well, this is what you get for not beating your kids' asses, or, whatever. Um,
True enough.
yeah, when I came to that part, I just was like, dude, tell me you've never had kids without telling me you've never had kids.
It was very heavy-handed. And, from some of the background reading that I did, it sounded like a lot of what I've seen it as Heinlein, and I've heard people also say Heinlein. I don't know which one's right, but it sounded like he did a lot of writing for youth before
Yeah.
this book, which is also kind of curious then to be like if your focus is on a youthful audience,
Mm-hmm.
and then you've got this kind of hot take here, what tell us how you really feel.
Right? Right. Oh, yeah. I wasn't displeased with this text. There are characters that I really did enjoy. I did not think I was actually going to enjoy this as much as I did. Uh, but like I said, I was basically going through a page hoping that things would pick up in a sci-fi
Hmm.
manner that I was like expecting. But again, I had
Hmm.
also tried to read this in high school and just couldn't get past the first chapter. Dizzy dying in the first chapter, I was like, okay, I'm out now, because like that's a
Ouch.
character that we knew from the film that just we never got to meet. If you think
Hmm.
about it, we never got to meet that character. So I was like, well, there goes one of the main characters in my mind. There goes one of the main characters. I'm really not interested anymore. I don't like where this is going. I couldn't get into the second chapter. The first chapter kind of, and it was like the first chapter was one of the only action packed chapters.
Oh yeah, until maybe the very tail end. I think
Mm-hmm.
you've it sort of sort of the front and the end of the book have the most action, and then everything in the middle is kind of like, ooh, this is a bit of a slog.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. I did learn a lot about um, mentality of the author in that middle, because we got to remember, when did you say this was published? In
I think it
1956?
was 59.
59?
59.
So we're Cold War era.
Yeah.
We're Cold War era. We have um, finished World War II fairly recently. Um, like it's a
I
new
think they even referenced the Korean War in the
right,
text.
and the Korean War would have ended around 59. I'm pretty sure. Now I gotta look it up. I am not okay. I know I keep saying I'm a history buff, and I am. I am shit with American history, though. Do not ask me anything,
Just the
anything
good
of the
stuff,
modern era near Cold War era. Not me. Korean War. Okay, Korean War. So, Korean War was June 25th, 1950 to July 27th, 53. So, yeah, the Korean War was
Okay, yeah.
very, very recent for this guy. Um, and it's poignant that he is referencing all of these things that, I mean, and in the history lessons and in all of the philosophical bits, yeah, they mention things that had happened in the Bug War, but everything they mention, like for tactics and for I don't know, for any reason, it's all stuff that's World War II and previous. And I think if we look at the fact that this was in the Cold War era, near that time where everyone was suspicious of everything, everyone was trying to make sure that they were not spilling state secrets to any, because you never knew who was going to be a spy for Russia. Um, that kind of mentality on keep your nose down, do your job, this is your task, this is your reward for doing it, it's prevalent. It's like the whole basis of their society now is
Hmm.
the civilians could not handle themselves. So veterans stepped up and put in this system, and now we're going to deal with it. And I don't know if that's the way that we should, like, I don't know how to articulate what I'm thinking about this book. It's one of those books that's like I closed it. I did tear up a little bit and sniffle because the ending is really good. I really did enjoy the ending. But at the same
And
time
I
I'm
think I
just like,
found the ending to be a bit saccharine. It's
really?
like, yeah, like, oh, okay, let's tie it up and put a little bow on it,
That's
like,
fair.
hey.
That's fair. That's really fair. No, damn it. Now you're making me rethink. No.
And maybe
Okay,
that's
yeah.
just going into it with the sci-fi mentality. I think there from everything I've said so far, I still feel like a net positive about this book. I liked the book. I did enjoy it overall, but it was like the times when I was most keyed in and most like, oh yeah, this is good, were the true sci-fi moments, when he's talking about
Mhm.
like the bowel quaking moments of being
Yeah.
shot out of a spaceship and stuff and shaking and being so afraid and that kind of stuff. It was
Yeah.
in those moments you felt like you could relate to this person who is very afraid but doing what needs to be done anyways. That sort of view of the military side of like, I'm terrified, but I'm doing what needs to be done because, my country, whatever.
Right.
Those were the moments where I felt most invested in the book, and the big, long exposition on. I, they even talked about like the Napoleonic Wars and different stuff.
Yes.
Like there was a lot of military history built
Just
into this book
crammed
where I was like,
in.
yeah, yeah, where it's like, I mean, maybe it goes to help build the understanding of what a militaristic democracy would be about,
Yeah.
that those would be the things that they would study that would be important to them. But like I said, going into something and being like, I'm looking for a sci-fi book, this had bits and pieces of that in it, but I would hesitate to say it's sci-fi. It has
I agree.
multiple elements to it.
I do agree with that. That's a very good point. And I think it's kind of telling. This is a fantastic partnership. That's what this is telling me, because you were definitely right on that. Those sci-fi moments are small, few in between, and I'm glad you're focusing on them, because all I can't get over is the philosophical jargon down your throat. Like, why would you put that in for a book that you are pitching for teenagers? Like, are you trying to get people to sign up for the military? Because it sounds like a recruitment all the way through. Like, that's all that it seems. And Johnny doesn't have a thought in his head other than when he's in the tube ready to get shot out of the egg, and whether or not he's going to even make it off of the deck. And those are the only time he has any of those feelings for him. Like, he's worried about flunking out of officer training. He's worried about not clearing the tube. That's all that he worries about. Like,
But then again, if you're looking at it from the perspective of maybe trying to appeal to uh, people of enlistment age, that's a time where a lot of people don't know what the hell they're doing.
that's true.
Like you're looking for something to be a part of, or, a, a wave to just kind of ride along with. And so maybe that's more accurate of somebody fresh out of high school, uh,
I
especially a
hadn't thought
guy
about
with
that.
military designs.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah. Okay, I'll go with that. All right, we've hit halfway. Doesn't feel like halfway, but we have hit halfway in this podcast. And we want to thank you guys for joining us on our very first episode of Ink and Asteroids. I really do like this conversation we're having about this book, because it has been on my list to actually read forever. And having read it, I actually feel better about the choices that I made right out of high school, to be perfectly honest. But now we're going to move over to some of the questions. Now, you and I had discussed some of these questions beforehand, um, but I don't remember all of the ones that we discussed, so I put in some other ones until we can even out what those standard questions are going to be. Okay,
All
so
right.
the first one I'm going to ask you is, which character did you connect with? And it doesn't have to be the main character. I don't think anybody could connect with Johnny Rico. He was a blank slate.
I would say that I didn't feel like any of the peripheral characters were fully realized enough for me to really have a strong connection to anybody.
Okay.
They're
There's a lot. There's a lot of
yeah,
characters that are there and then
they're
gone.
they're sort of moving about, but yeah, I would be lying if I was saying that I felt like I strongly connected with any one of the characters.
I actually have an answer for that one. I connected
Okay.
with Ace.
Oh,
So,
really?
in the book, for those who have not read it yet, Ace is actually an older guy. He has been in for a long time, and he gets promoted around the same time Johnny does. He's already part of the team when Johnny arrives. And he's the one that tells Johnny to join the officer training. And he, like, talks him into it. And they butt heads at first. So much so that Johnny and Ace decide to duke it out in the bathroom, if
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember correctly. Like, they're like, come on, let's go. Well, we need to go talk about something in the bathroom, in the shower room. And they just, like, wail on each other. And then finally Ace looks at him and is like, you punch me in the face. You need to punch me in the face. And Johnny's like, why? Johnny's like on the floor gasping for breath because he's like this 20-year-old, and this 35-year-old man just walloped on him. And he's like, no, 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 Johnny, you really need to punch me in the face. So he does. And Ace gets a busted lip and a busted nose or whatever. He's like, all right, you're never going to have a problem from me again. And Johnny's just like, what the fuck is going on? And it was just like, okay, what I took that as is like, we're going to duke it out. We're going to establish dominance and go on. But the fact that Ace gave him that dominance did not sit right. Like, it's like a stolen kind of alpha type thing. And I didn't get it. But then later on, Ace is like, you're too good to be where you are. You need to join the officer training program and get out of here. And I connected with that because I like to think that I help push people where they can achieve their potential. And I'm not great at it. I'm a dick, and I recognize that. Maybe that's also why I connected with Ace. But I like to say, like, okay, logically, this is where you're at. This is where you should be. Let's get you there. And sometimes that works for myself, but most time it helps other people. And so I connected with Ace. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Well, and I guess to expand on that, the moments that I connected with the character most would be Johnny Rico, but it was in the moments of fear and uncertainty where I
Really?
felt like, yes, like, okay, this is a real guy really going through it or whatever. Those are the moments that I felt, like I said, most keyed in or dialed into the book was when he was experiencing intense emotion.
Okay. I can I can get behind that. Like I said, he does show it sometimes, but more often than not, he's just like
Infrequently.
relaying what's happening as if he were like writing in a diary or something
Yeah.
for posterity, not necessarily for his own self-reflection. Okay, so this is one of the questions I came up with. What does the text tell us about the current vibe of the world today?
The vibe of their world,
Of our world.
of our world. Ooh.
Because, sci-fi, no matter when you read it, should reflect something. Because it's a
Yeah.
fictional future and technologies and whatever like that. Usually it reflects back on us in some way. So what kind of reflection did you get for today?
Um, I would say just the thing that comes to mind would be what's the right way to like the military's role in things essentially, like
Mm-hmm.
the sort of in some ways, especially the reaction of his parents,
Mm-hmm.
where you look at them, some people look at the military as something honorable and a way to further your career and something good. And then some parents look at it as, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to potentially put your life in danger? And the fact that we have had decades worth of time elapse between the writing of the book and where we are now, and how the military does still, those sort of root things haven't changed. Uh, and I do feel like the heavy-handed role of the military in our current state of being, we
Yeah.
may not have a society where you have to have served in the military to be a voter, but I think there's definitely a status that comes along with it that almost makes it feel like maybe you've got more of a say in things if you have served.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll agree with it. I would definitely say that I okay, this is going to come out really 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 hard. I think this could be an example of where specifically the US ends up along our current
Sure.
current wave. Okay, this is a lovely portrait of how nationalism becomes everything, and it's a little different because in the book it's a globalization has taken nationalism widespread. It's not, we're not countries anymore. In fact, they talk about that, how it used to be countries fighting against countries, and now it's planets against planets, so different species against different species. So I think the book is definitely an allegory for racism, because not only there's for those who haven't read it, there's not two races in this war. There's actually multiple, and I think we name at least three. There's the humans, the arachnids, and then another one that I can't remember what they're called. But
Is
they
it the skinny
the skinnies,
something?
but they're called something like their legitimate name, but they're nicknamed the
Yes.
skinnies, and they're kind of in the middle of this arachnid human war. And the humans aren't looking too good on them. The arachnids aren't looking too good on them. Like, they are just kind of stuck in the middle of this conflict. And the fact that nobody has any compassion for this race of beings that are just kind of there. Like, the humans really don't care. They're just in the way. And the arachnids really don't care because they don't have feelings. Like, I took that as an allegory for racism and how nationalism just kind of, it doesn't matter. They are in the way. We're going to take them out because for the greater good. I will say, one of the things that I thought was commendable in the whole of the text was the idea, the premise for the reason for the veterans to have a voting voice, whereas civilians did not. Citizens had the vote, civilians did not, and it came out towards the end. Um, and I don't know if it was during his officers' training, but the reasoning that the governing body decided to give the veterans the vote was because the veterans had already proven that they were willing to sacrifice self for the greater good of everyone. Whereas the author looked down on civilians and said the civilians are greedy, they're not going to ever, vote the way that people as in general need. They're only going to vote on things that will garner them a profit in the end.
In their own interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought about that particular part made me actually stop and think about it. Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense in the fact that there aren't a lot of troopers. Johnny says that many times. There's probably only 15,000 troopers in the whole of the army, and they don't talk about troopers and fleet or anything like that. The cap troopers and the fleet, there's army and there's navy, and they don't get along, but they have to work together. The navy always thinks the army has nothing to do, that just lazing about, and the troopers just think the navy just flies the crates. And they're both right and they're both wrong. But in the end, there's not a lot of military personnel. So much so that they only take volunteers, kind of like our U.S. military now. They only take volunteers. We've only had the draft a couple of times. Not that I'm condoning the draft or anything like that. But it's not a conscription-based society within the text. And the fact that there are only so many troopers, every time a trooper is lost, that's not just millions and millions of credits, but it's also, one less person to do the good of the task for everyone, because you're not guaranteed somebody else to take his place. And that made me stop and think about it. Yeah. Nobody just goes into this for the vote. you have to think about, I mean, Johnny did, let's be honest. He just went into it for the vote, and because Carl was going and Carmen happened to be
Right.
there. And he got kind of uh, embarrassed into joining because, spoiler alert, Johnny was not going to join the infantry. He wasn't going to join the military at all. He'd showed up so he could tell Carl he wasn't going to join. And there's Carmen, the girl he'd been like crushing on for years. And she was like, "Oh, are you guys joining?" And Carl was like, "Yep." And Johnny was like, "Yep, we're going in right now."
We're
And
doing it.
she's like, "Okay, come on." Looped arms and in they went. Like he got embarrassed and all giddy and even as they're walking in, he's like, "I can't believe I said that. I can't help but join because I just told the prettiest girl in school that I was going to join." So, yeah, I think the whole nationalism really, like, this is a clear roadmap on where we're going if we keep on our current political vibe, is what I'm getting at. That was a real roundabout way, and I'm sorry.
You brought it back home.
I did. Okay, what was one of the impossible to believe things that was mentioned in the text for you?
Um, are we allowed spoilers in
Yeah,
this?
you can do spoilers.
Well, I would say his father ending up in the service and on the same ship as him was my I call bullshit
What
moment.
the hell was that? I am so glad you brought it up because that was okay. When I wrote this question, I was like, okay, this could go two ways. It could either be like impossible tech, impossible situation, or impossible person. And oh my god, Mr. Rico joining, making it through boot camp, and then ending up on the ship as Johnny is leaving.
Yeah. Yeah,
Not on
and
my
that was why
bingo
I said
card.
that was one of those things where I said it just ended up feeling a little bit saccharine, a little bit like, really? Like, his dad was portrayed as sort of like a capitalist pig,
He
like he,
was.
and then this change of heart, and I realized there were extenuating circumstances, and maybe that would change the way you feel about things, but uh yeah, I'm like with the tech and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're supposed to be 700 years in the future, whatever it is. Like I can suspend disbelief for technology and different kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but that moment was just kind of one of those things where it's like, who's this for? I don't.
It's for all those little boys who joined the army and their daddy didn't approve. Um,
Right.
that's that's what I took it as.
Yeah.
For me, it was the oh, there were a lot of them. There were little things, little itty bitty things. So the impossible to believe ones were basically the mini nukes. They're not nukes. They're not nukes. They're mini hydrogen bombs. Like
So tiny and compact.
they were small. Like he was using them like grenades. I was like, okay, I know they're not small when we were using them, which, granted, was a couple of years before the book was written. We don't use them anymore. Is it impossible to think beyond hydrogen bombs because the technology hadn't caught up? And if that was the case, why didn't you think of, like, you thought of disintegrating eggs being shot out for paratroopers? The paratroopers are strapped into these polyurethane eggs that kind of fleck away, you know, as they're entering Atmo. But you thought of that, but you couldn't think of something better than an H bomb or a flamethrower though. Flamethrowers were pretty cool. I liked
I think
those.
the mech suits in general were pretty cool. The idea
Yes.
of being able to, leap over a house in a single bounce.
That was
I want one
or
of
the
those.
gorges because he went over ravines and stuff like that. And then
Hmm.
the other one was at the very end with the psychics. They're not called psychics, but they were psychics. Like
Yeah.
I there were a
That
couple of
was one of those like,
scenes,
where did this come from kind of
right?
moment.
Just
Like,
kind of
no mention until this,
ever.
we're just gonna drop this in.
Um, there were a couple of scenes, like I had one, and I totally lost it, where I was like, "What did you read in that?" Because I did not understand it. Um, there was okay. Oh, I remember what it was. Okay, this is gonna be my freebie question. Well, we're gonna do our freebie questions, and then we're gonna move on to our scoring. Like, how many stars would you give it? So my freebie question was this: in basic, he is squad leader. He is doing the thing with his team when um what was his name? Zed?
Them?
Zim. When Zim taps him on the shoulder and tells him when he gets his lashes. What was it he did wrong? Because I didn't understand.
God.
He fired something as one of the cap troopers were leaving. And he I don't know if it was because he used his eyesight and didn't trust the suit visor.
Yes. That I think that was it
And
exactly.
he
That he
fired towards, well, like, is that what it was? Because I thought that was fucking brilliant. While your guy is booking it out in the suit, shoot, like, cover him. And yet he got in trouble. I don't understand why he got lashes
yeah,
for that.
I think the way that I interpreted it, and it was funny. I know we're not talking about the movie, but I did watch the movie last night just so I could bring things full circle. And I was like, I don't remember if he got lashes in the book or not. And now that you're saying it, yes, I think it was because they're trained to uh
Trust the
go through
equipment.
different, well, yeah, different check systems to make
Mm.
sure of it. And he was more like, oh, I knew better, or I I thought so. I just went ahead and did, rather than going through the specific checks to make sure that everything is as it should be.
I think that part of the book is where Johnny stops thinking for himself, to be perfectly honest. Because he takes risks all through basic, and then in when you get to the end of the book, he's very much like, I'm checking in with so and so, I'm checking in with all of my teams, I'm not doing anything until I get the clear from, because he was in officers training, so he wasn't an actual officer yet. But I think that point where he gets the administration discipline is where he stops thinking for himself and he turns full
They
soldier.
break him of the wild card factor, and it's just
Right.
like, I'm gonna listen, I'm gonna follow the rules, I'm gonna do what I'm told.
Yeah. So, thank you, because like I when I read that scene twice because I didn't understand like why he would get in trouble for that. So thank you, I appreciate that. Uh,
Military.
Makes sense now. That's all you gotta say. It's military. Okay, so do you have a freebie question for me? Any question?
Let me see if I wrote anything down. So I think I did. Um, I had two things that we can bring up. The On a personal level, would you rather go through boot camp, serve on a starship, or be dropped out into space in a combat suit?
Well, I would. I think. Hmm. I okay. So, my brain cannot compute this question because there. I feel okay. I did join the army when I was 18, 17, 17. So the easy answer to that is yes to all of that. And I say it because I feel like you would have to go through boot camp to either fly a starship or to
Or
get dropped out in the egg. Um, to be Navy or for Army, you'd have to go through some kind of basic training. And the fact that I was willing to do that 16, 17, yeah. And I did it so I could become a pilot. Um, I didn't go into the, no, it didn't happen. But I did join. So,
you're not talking to us from your jet right now,
no,
your
no.
cockpit.
I wanted to fly helicopters, okay? I wanted to fly
Okay.
medevac. And I actually got rank before I deployed to basic. Um, not deployed, but got shipped off to basic. I had reached when you entered the delayed entry program in the early 2000s. Doing certain things could get you rank before you even made it to basic. The highest you could go was, I think it was private first class. You couldn't go beyond private first class, but I had a year of delayed entry program. So like I did map reading, and I did oh shit, we did a lot of stuff. Um, Map reading, we did PT every Fridays. We learned the phonetic alphabet, codes and stuff like that. Like I used to know Morse code. Don't ask me to do it now. Learned rank and insignia and marches and all that kind of stuff. So I got to private first class before I even met basic training. But my MOS was 15. I had two. I first signed for 15 PAPA, which is Aviation Operations Specialist. And then I got to renegotiate my contract for 15 Quebec, which was Air Traffic Controller. But because I was underage, I was still legally the responsibility of my mother, and she pulled my contract before I ever went. So I attained rank that didn't get to stick. I don't have a jacket that you will find in any military record, unfortunately, because I was a minor. And so, yeah, the easier answer to that is yes, I would go through basic training, and I would either one, either one. I wouldn't mind being a cap trooper. I was actually really excited when I joined because I thought equality was everywhere. And when I joined, I was like, I really want to do infantry. And they're like, you can't do that. You're a woman. No. Let's talk about that at some point. Women are not
That was going to
allowed
be
in the infantry. They're not
that was
allowed in
going to
the
be
army.
my yeah, the last thing that I brought up, because I wouldn't want to do any of it. I wouldn't want to go through boot camp or be shot out of a spaceship. But I I did want to bring up the portrayal of women in the book, which is kind of, on the one hand, you've got that, like, this, what's the word, like glorification in the sense that they're like, women are meant to be pilots, they've got better
Mm-hmm.
reflexes, they're more suited to do it, it's a no-brainer that should be pilots. But
Yeah.
then in every other respect, they're not, you don't see that same,
Mm-mm.
that same
No.
elevation of them.
Nope. And that was actually something that I like. It made me stop when I got to that point that when Johnny was like, obviously she went into the Navy, she placed where she wanted to be, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of bitching. And then I realized later on when he gets to basic, he's like, there's 2,000 guys here and not a sniff of a female among them. And I was like, okay, so women can join, but they have to join the Navy, and they almost always end up as captains and pilots, and they are segregated on ships to the women's what was it, the women's, it wasn't ward or something like that, but it was like a forward, that all of the women bunked there. No men could go. Like Johnny was like, I'm excited because I get the guard duty outside the women's forward. And I was just like, for a military based society where deeds make you responsible for the whole, the selfless deeds of joining and serving make you responsible for the decisions of the whole. Why are we still sexist and segregated like that? What the hell is going on? So I'm glad I touched on your second question.
Yeah, yeah, it goes from being like, wow, this is really progressive, to like, oh,
Oh, not
maybe not
really.
so much. Yeah,
I will
yeah,
say that I did shave my head when I joined at 16, 17. Maybe I should bring in my yearbook and you can see it. Me and my short
yes,
ass
please.
hair, my senior year, because I shaved it off the summer of summer between junior and senior year. And when my
And they're
senior
like, you didn't
picture,
actually have to do that.
um, yeah, there were a couple of factors into it, but yeah, I did cut it all off. And then my mother was like, "That's not how I wanted your senior pictures to look." So that's, I know it's hard to think of it now, but yes, I did. I have actually shaved my head twice in my life. So, okay, so
I feel like everybody should do it at least
at
once.
least once. So what is your overall rating for Starship Troopers?
Um,
Five
I
stars as being
usually,
like the
yeah,
best.
yeah. I usually use like the Goodreads system, which is 1 to 5, and I would say it falls squarely at maybe like a 3.5 for me.
I would
There was a
agree.
lot about the book that I liked, and then there was a slog factor through the
All
middle
of his
chapters
lessons.
of,
All of his
yeah,
lessons.
yeah,
There was so much information there that I did not retain much of it.
right.
As a history person, I did not like, but it wasn't even just like history lessons. It was like the why a warrior of this caliber would do something like that. And it was just like, okay, that is not a fact. That's an opinion, and it has no bearing in a history. So, yeah, I did not retain a lot of that information. It was good information, but
Yeah.
it I
It's
did
it's clinical. It's like reading a football playbook or something.
right.
Like,
I did not
you
think
know,
it actually needed to be there for the purpose of the story.
right.
Yeah. I did enjoy the little footnote at the end about the Roger Young and where the name came from. That made me
Yeah.
tear up a little bit. But I
Yeah, that was
agree.
cool.
3.5 stars, and not just because it was first person.
But it helps, right?
it uh usually I don't know if you've listened to some of our other episodes, but usually if there is a book that we're reading in first person, it automatically gets 1 star deduction from me.
Oh, okay.
So I'm
Fair
not
enough.
doing it this time, but if I were, it'd probably be then 2.5 stars. But I would say as a sci-fi book, this is definitely not a sci-fi book. It was a
Yeah,
good read though.
it was. I enjoyed it.
I like I said at the end. Now that you have said that, I'm now looking at the epilogue differently. Um, yeah,
I didn't mean to sour it for you.
it's not sour. It's just realizing that there's way too much sugar. It's different, you know? Like, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's okay, that's sweet. And now I'm realizing, okay, that's way too sweet. You put too much brown sugar and too much white sugar in there. No, 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 no. He didn't need to have his dad be his second in command.
A phone
Um,
call,
his dad
with
didn't need to
an
join.
attaboy. An attaboy, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry would
I
have done it.
honestly, I would have rather had not them getting together, not having the ending being another jump, which I guess that makes sense that it would be another jump. Um, but I would have liked to have him and Mr. Dubois meet up again.
Oh yeah.
Because Mr.
Yeah, I think
Dubois
that
is a presence through the whole story, and we only see him in that one flashback. And then he's just
yeah.
kind of like moving strings behind the scenes.
He plays more of a father figure role than the actual dad, and yeah, maybe seeing that relationship sort of flesh out would have been nice at the end.
Yeah. Well, Smash, I am so happy to have read this book with you. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
discussing
thank
it with
you.
me. I hope you come back for another book. We will, if we're going to do another book, we will definitely announce it in a subsequent episode. We don't have one lined up right now, um, but we will post it on the Discord. We'll announce it in either another episode of The Pretty Little Death or The Book Was Better, and we'll talk about it then. Thank you, everyone. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, share, join our Discord, and join us for the next book.